For almost 400 years, humanity stayed away from war in the stars. They joined the big Galactic Council soon after first meeting aliens, but they signed a strong promise called the Non-Aggression and Non-Intervention Accords. Humans agreed never to fight or take sides in any space war. They wanted peace, trade, and new friends instead. The aliens gave them advanced engines, better shields, and fast travel tech in return. Everyone called humans the observers or the merchants because they're ships. They carried goods messages and scientists, but never weapons. The galaxy watched humans with smiles and sometimes jokes. Their fleets looked strange. Small, fast ships with smooth shapes moved between stars like busy traders. No giant battleships, no rows of glowing cannons, no fleets that could shake planets. Aliens thought humans were soft and clever, only with words and deals, not fighters. The big war, called the Ecliptic War, went on for more than 100 years. It started when the tall crystal beings, known as the Voron Dominion, wanted more systems to grow their living ships. The Voran looked like walking towers of shining quartz. Their warships were alive. They could heal from terrible damage and grow bigger over time. Their enemies were the Cleith Swarm, a huge cloud of living ships that acted like one mind. The Cleith covered whole worlds, turned them into nests, and sent out billions of small, biting craft. Both sides hated each other, and neither could win. The Voran and Cleith fought over systems rich in heavy metals and rare gases. They broke moons, turned planets into ash clouds, and left black holes where stars once burned. The war cost more lives than anyone could count, yet it never ended. Both sides grew tired but too proud to stop. They asked other races for help, but most stayed neutral like humans. Humans watched everything. They sent drones to record battles. They studied ship designs. They listened to battle talk on open channels. They traded food, medicine, and tools with both. Besides, the Voran bought human art and music. The Cleith liked human stories told in data bursts. Humans made money and learned much, but never joined the fight. Aliens thought this proved humans feared real war. Then everything changed. The Voran lost too many ships in one bad year. Their crystal admirals grew desperate. They needed fuel for their living engines. They looked at maps and saw the human home system called Sol. It sat far from the main war zones, but it had huge clouds of helium. 3, and perfect for fusion. The Voran leaders talked in secret. They decided to take Sol by force. They told their fleet commanders to prepare a fast strike. No warning, no talk. Just take the gas refineries and leave before humans could complain. The attack fleet jumped in silence. More than 9,000 crystal warships appeared near the outer edge of Sol. They moved toward the big gas collectors that floated in the dark beyond. Neptune human warning beacons lit up and sent messages, but the Voran ignored. By them, the crystal ships formed a tight spear shape and pushed forward. Their weapons glowed, ready to burn through human stations. On Earth, people watched screens in quiet rooms. Leaders from every nation sat together. They had known this day might come. They had plans ready for a long time. No one panicked, no one shouted. Orders moved fast and clear across the planet. A single message went out from Earth on every open channel in the galaxy. It came from the Terran Concord Council. The voice sounded calm. And even it spoke only one line. Humanity hereby withdraws from the Non-Intervention Accords, effective immediately. The message ended. No threats, no explanations, just those words across the galaxy. Aliens heard it and laughed. The Voran admiral on the flagship laughed loudest. He turned to his officers and said the soft merchants finally show teeth, but they have no bite. He ordered the fleet to keep moving toward the helium clouds. He thought humans would send diplomats soon, begging for peace. On so many worlds, people gathered in public squares to watch screens. They whispered about the old accords and what breaking them meant. Some aliens felt curious, others felt nothing. The war had lasted so long, one small change seemed unimportant, but on human worlds, the mood shifted fast. Factories that made civilian ships stopped normal work. Crews moved in and started changing designs. Freighters got heavy armor plates. Passenger ships gained missile tubes. Mining tugs received point defense guns. Research. Stations opened hidden bays full of drones. No one made speeches. No banners waved. No crowds cheered. Everything happened in silence and speed. In shipyards around Mars, and the asteroid belt lights burned all night. Welders worked without rest. Engineers tested new systems. Pilots ran drills in simulators. Families said quiet goodbyes, knowing many would not return. Yet no one complained. No one ran away. Duty called, and they answered. The Voran fleet reached the first human refinery. They sent boarding. Our teams in crystal pods. The pods touched the station hull and started cutting inside. Human security answered with small arms and traps. The fight stayed short. The Voran took the station, but found it almost empty. No fuel waited for them. The tanks stood dry. The pipes ran cold. Humans had moved everything days before. The Admiral grew angry. He ordered sensors to sweep deeper into the system. They found human ships moving, but not toward the fight. They moved away from the Voran. They formed loose groups. Annan waited. The Admiral smiled again. He thought humans ran from battle. He did not know the truth. Humanity had waited centuries for this moment. They studied every war. They learned from every mistake. They built weapons in secret. They trained soldiers in silence. They planned for the day. Someone forced their hand. Now that day arrived. On a small moon near Jupiter, a last council met. The leaders looked at maps showing the Voran position. They checked reports from scouts. They nodded once. Then the order went out. All forces prepare to jump. The time of watching ends today. Ships across the system lit their drives. Engines hummed with power. Drives pooled energy for the big leap. No flags rose. No horns sounded. Just quiet purpose. Far away, the Voran kept pushing. They scanned for human fleets and found none big enough to fear. They relaxed a little. They thought victory sat close. They were wrong in hidden shipyards beyond Pluto. Final checks finished. Crews strapped in. Pilots. Touched controls won. Last time engineers locked systems. Navigators set jump points. Commanders gave the word jump, space folded. Light bent, ships vanished from Sol and appeared somewhere else. The galaxy did not know yet, but the change had begun. Humanity entered the battlefield. The long silence broke at last. The galaxy kept laughing at first. The message from Earth sounded like a small joke to most aliens. The Voran admiral still pushed his fleet deeper into the Sol system. He expected human ships to appear soon. With white flags and offers to talk. Instead, nothing came. No pleas, no diplomats, no big speeches. The silence grew thick and strange. On human worlds, the change moved fast but quiet. Factories that once built cargo haulers now worked on armor and guns. Workers wore the same coveralls as always. They used the same tools. They just added new parts. No one shouted orders. No one waved flags. Everything happened in calm steps. People knew their jobs. They did them well. In the rings of Saturn, hidden yards. Opened up long lines of ships waited in the dark. Small mining tugs grew thick hulls with extra plating. Fast courier vessels added missile racks and laser arrays. Passenger liners that once carried families now held drone bays. Research ships showed hidden weapon pods that no one outside humanity had ever seen. Crews boarded without fanfare. They ran final checks. They tested engines. They waited for the word. The first group to move carried no name at first. Later, the galaxy called it Task Force Zero. 1,200 ships jumped out from different points around Sol. They looked nothing like a real fleet. Some ships shone bright and new. Others wore old paint and dents. Freighters sat next to sleek scouts. Yachts floated beside heavy ore carriers. The formation looked messy and weak. Voran sensors caught the jump signatures. Officers on the flagship watched the data and smiled. The admiral leaned forward and said, "Look at this junkyard. Humans send their trash to die." He ordered his crystal, her warships to form a wall of light. Their weapons charged in perfect lines. They waited for the easy kill. Task Force. Zero arrived at the edge of the main war zone. They did not charge straight in. They spread out slow and careful. Scouts moved ahead. Drones slipped into sensor shadows. Small teams tested ranges. No one fired yet. The humans watched and learned. The Vorin held the shattered system called Vax 9. They had fought there for 6 long years. The Clythe swarm once owned the place. Now only. In broken worlds and drifting wrecks remained. 8,000 crystal leviathans sat in tight formation. Their living hulls glowed soft blue light. They repaired damage as fast as it came. The Vorin felt safe here. They thought no one could break them. Human scouts reached the outer pickets first. Tiny drones, no bigger than a human hand, drifted close. They mapped every ship. They counted regeneration nodes. They marked weak points in the crystal lattice. No alarms sounded. The Vorin ignored the small. Contacts. They thought the drones came from wrecked Clythe ships left behind. Then the main human force jumped in. One moment, empty space. The next moment, 1,200 ships filled the void. They appeared in a loose cloud, not a neat line. No battle hymn played. No battle flags rose. The ships just arrived and started moving. Vorin tactical officers stared at their screens. The admiral frowned. He expected fear or retreat. Instead, the human ships accelerated hard. Engines burned bright. They pushed at speeds that made no sense. Crystal ships moved slow and steady. Human ships twisted and turned like living things. They danced through space at 40 Gs or more. Some pushed 60 Gs for short bursts. Inertial dampeners held crews safe, but the sight looked impossible. The Vorin opened fire first. Their prism cascade lit up the dark. Millions of light lances stabbed forward. Bright beams cut toward the human cloud. Any normal ship would break apart. The beams should slice hulls like paper. Human ships did not break. Most beams hit and slid away. Hulls shimmered with strange foam that soaked up energy. Some ships vented heat into tiny rifts that opened and closed fast. Magnetic fields bent the light away. Other beams simply missed because the targets moved too quick and wild. Voran officers shouted in surprise. Their weapons always worked before. Now they failed. The admiral ordered a second wave, bigger beams, wider sweeps, full power. The light storm grew brighter. Humans answered now. Small craft broke. And from the main group, racing skiffs, pleasure yachts converted ore haulers. They darted forward at crazy speeds. They closed the gap in seconds. Vorin point defenses tried to track them. The small ships jinked left and right. They spun. They rolled. They slipped through fire like shadows. Each small craft carried burdens, micro-missiles launched in clouds. The missiles looked weak at first. They flew slow. Then they sped up. They twisted in flight. They aimed for exact spots on the crystal hulls. Regeneration. Nodes glowed bright on Vorin ships. The missiles sought those nodes. They burrowed in deep, then they exploded. Small-shaped antimatter blasts cracked the crystal just enough. The living ships could not heal fast enough. One Vorin cruiser lost a whole section of hull. Crystal shards floated away like broken glass. Another lost engine pods. A third went dark when its core lattice split. The Vorin tried to pull back. Their slow turns could not match human speed. Task Force Zero kept pushing. They split. Into smaller groups. They attacked from every side. They never stayed in one place long enough for the Voran to focus. Humans used old battle data. They knew how Voran ships turned. They knew how admirals thought. They used that knowledge now. Drones swarmed in thousands. Some drones carried heavy charges. Others carried jammers that filled Vorin sensors with noise. Crystal targeting systems failed. Many beams hit empty space. Some hit friendly ships by mistake. Confusion grew on the Vorin side. The Admiral roared orders. He demanded full regeneration. He pushed his flagship forward. the huge crystal cathedral ship lit up bright. It tried to draw all human fire to itself. Other Voran ships rallied around it. They formed a shield wall. Humans saw the move. They did not attack the flagship yet. They kept picking off smaller ships. One by one, Voran vessels went silent. Their lights dimmed. Their hulls cracked beyond repair. In the first hour alone, more than 400 crystal ships stopped. Fighting scouts reported back to Earth. Commanders listened. They nodded. They sent new orders. Task Force 0 must hold position. More forces prepare to jump. The real test comes soon. Across human spaceships waited in formation. Freighters stood ready with full missile bays. Liners carried thousands of combat drones. Mining ships loaded rail guns. Yachts filled bays with fast attack craft. Everyone knew their role. No one asked why. No one doubted the plan. The Voran admiral watched his losses climb, and still believed humans would break soon. He sent a message on open channels. He mocked the junkyard fleet. He called humans cowards who hid behind tricks. He said the war would end with Voran victory as always. No human answered. The silence returned. But the silence felt different now. It carried weight. It carried promise. Task Force 0 kept moving. They circled the Voran formation like wolves around a wounded giant. They struck fast. They struck hard. They never stopped. The galaxy watched screens on. Many worlds. Aliens who once laughed now stared quiet. Some whispered in fear. Others felt hope. The ecliptic war had dragged on forever. Now something new appeared. Humanity did not announce itself with noise. It simply arrived. It simply fought. And the fight looked nothing like anyone expected. The mismatched fleet pressed forward. Engines burned bright, weapons spoke in sharp bursts. The Voran wall started to crack. The battlefield belonged to humans now. They had waited centuries for this. They trained in secret. They built in silence. They planned every move. Now they used it all. The first 2 hours passed fast. The Voran learned fear. The Clythe watched from far away and felt something stir in their hive mind. The war that never ended began to shift, and it shifted because humans finally stepped in. Part 3. The first 2 hours passed like a storm. The Voran fleet still stood strong, but cracks appeared everywhere. Crystal ships that once healed in moments now leaked light from deep wounds. Their regeneration slowed. Human small craft kept darting in. They struck fast and vanished before return fire could catch them. The mismatched human fleet moved without pattern, yet every move hit hard. The Voran tried to form tight spheres for mutual defense, but humans broke the spheres apart with quick strikes from unexpected angles. Task Force 0 split again. Some groups pulled back, others pushed deeper. Small converted yachts now carried the heaviest loads. They flew straight at Voran capital ships. An engine screamed at maximum. They released clouds of micro-missiles that twisted in flight like angry insects. The missiles found weak seams in crystal armor. They burrowed. They waited. They exploded together in perfect timing. One explosion after another cracked living hulls beyond repair. Voran repair nodes glowed red, then died. On the Voran flagship, the Admiral watched screens fill with red warnings. Losses climbed past 1,000 ships. He shouted for full prism cascade again. The weapons lit. Space in blinding white light lances stabbed everywhere. Some hit human ships, hulls sparked, but most damage vanished into strange foam layers or bent away by shifting magnetic fields. One human freighter took a direct hit to the bow. It kept flying. The crew patched the hole in minutes and rejoined the fight. Humans did not shout back. They did not send taunts. They simply kept moving. Their silence felt heavier than any words. The Voran started to feel something new, fear mixed with confusion. They had crushed countless fleets before. This felt different. These humans did not fight like warriors. They fought like machines that had waited too long. Then the real surprise came. At hour 2.00, human ships changed tactics. They stopped the random swarms. They formed 3 long arrows. Each arrow pointed at a different part of the Voran wall. The arrows accelerated together. Every ship pushed engines past safe limits. Inertial dampeners whined under strain. Crews stayed calm. They trusted their tech. The arrows slammed into the Voran line, like spears through glass. Crystal ships shattered where the points hit. The middle arrow drove straight toward the flagship. The side arrows curled around to trap escaping ships. Voran point defenses fired wild. Many beams missed completely. Some hit their own ships in panic. The formation broke apart. Inside the human command ship, a quiet voice spoke over fleet channels. Maintain speed. Target nodes only. No waste. No glory. Just finish the job. Captains. He nodded. They adjusted courses, they locked weapons, they pressed on. The Voran admiral finally understood his mistake. He had thought humans weak because they lacked huge warships. He had thought they feared death. Now he saw the truth. Humans did not need big ships. They needed speed, precision, and numbers that shocked the mind. Every small craft acted like a guided bomb. Every drone carried death in tiny packages. The admiral ordered retreat. Micro-jumps began. Crystal ships folded space to escape humans. I'd waited for that move, too. Scouts had watched old battles. They knew Voran panic patterns. They knew exit points before the jumps even started. Drone swarms waited in those exact places. When Voran ships appeared, human missiles greeted them. Shaped charges ripped through regeneration cores. Engines died. Weapons went dark. Ships drifted helpless. One Voran heavy cruiser jumped out and found itself surrounded. 50 human yachts circled it like sharks. They fired railguns in sequence, tungsten slugs. I punched through crystal at high speed. The cruiser tried to heal. It failed. The hull split open. Atmosphere vented in white clouds. The ship went silent. The swarm watched from the far side of the system. Their hive mind stirred. Thousands of bioships turned toward the battle. They felt the change in the war. They sensed weakness in their old enemy. They wanted to strike while the Voran bled. The swarm sent scout tendrils forward. Living probes slipped through the chaos. They tasted human emissions. They learned human signatures. Humans noticed the new contacts. They did not panic. Small drone groups peeled off to meet the Clythe scouts. Tiny missiles met living flesh. The scouts died fast. The swarm recoiled in surprise. They had never seen anything kill so clean and quick. Back at the main fight hour, 3 arrived. Human losses stayed low. Most damage came from lucky Voran beams. A few small ships burned. A handful of drones vanished. Yet the fleet grew stronger. New jumps brought reinforcements. The freighters arrived, loaded with fresh missiles. Liners dropped thousands of new combat drones. Ore carriers unleashed railgun barrages. The battlefield filled with more human ships every minute. Voran ships tried one last stand. They gathered in a desperate knot. Their weapons pointed outward. They fired everything at once. Light and plasma filled space. Humans danced through the storm. They used speed to stay ahead. They used shields to take glancing hits. They used numbers to overwhelm a single human. A bulk hauler named Dawn Runner jumped close to a Voran battleship. The hauler looked old and slow, yet it carried a surprise. Inside its cargo bay sat a shaped fusion charge. 120 gigatons wrapped in precise lenses. The hauler accelerated straight at the battleship. Voran defenses tried to stop it. Point lasers burned the hull, railguns punched holes, the hauler kept coming. At the last second, it detonated. The blast shaped into a narrow cone. It punched straight through the crystal core. The Ang saw his fleet die around him. He sent one last message on open channels. This cannot be. Humans are merchants. They do not fight like this. He begged for reason. He offered terms. No answer came from humanity. The human ships kept moving. They kept killing. They showed no mercy and no hate, just cold purpose. The Clythe swarm committed more. Forces bioships poured into the system. They formed living walls. They sent biting swarms toward human positions. Humans met them head-on. Drones clashed with living tendrils. Railguns tore through flesh. Missile clouds met acid spit. Yet humans adapted fast. They used the same tricks. They targeted nerve clusters. They injected fast neuroagents. They cut communication links. The swarm felt pain for the first time in centuries. Whole sections of their mind went quiet. Hour 4 approached the Voran line. I collapsed. Crystal ships drifted in growing numbers. Some tried to surrender by going dark. Others jumped away in blind panic. Many died before they could escape. The humans did not chase every ship. They focused on the centers of power. They hunted flagships. They hunted repair hubs. They hunted command nodes. The battlefield turned into a graveyard of broken crystal and silent biohulls. Task Force Zero held the center. More human groups jumped in. They brought fresh crews. They brought more weapons. They was small and strange destroying giants with small and strange destroying giants with ease. The old jokes died. No one called humans soft anymore. No one laughed at the junkyard fleet. Fear spread quiet and deep. The ecliptic war had rules. Now those rules broke apart. Humanity did not follow any school of war. They made their own, and their way worked too well. The turning point arrived. The Voran could not hold. The Clythe could not advance. The battlefield belonged to the newcomers who waited so long in silence, and they were only getting started. Part 4. Hour 4 began with the battlefield in chaos. Voran ships drifted in broken groups. Their once proud crystal hulls now showed huge cracks leaking soft blue light. Many tried to jump away, but human drones waited at every exit point. Missiles struck before engines could fully charge. Ships appeared only to explode in silent flashes. The Voran admiral watched his command fall apart. He stood on the bridge of his flagship surrounded by officers who no longer spoke. Their faces showed shock and fear. The war they knew had rules. This fight followed none. Humans kept their pressure steady. Task Force Zero split into hunting packs. Small, fast ships chased lone Voran stragglers. Larger groups circled the main knots of crystal warships. They fired in careful bursts. Never waste, never rush. Just hit the spots that hurt most. Regeneration nodes. I shattered one after another. Living crystal could not grow back fast enough when struck in the same place too many times. Then humanity showed something even more frightening. They had prepared for this war long before anyone forced their hand. Every human colony held secret stores of power. Huge fusion devices sat disguised as normal reactors. They looked like simple fuel plants to any scanner. Now those devices woke up. Bulk carriers opened bays. Liners dropped shielded pods. Freighters launched long, on tubes that carried death in clean shapes. The first salvo came without warning. A quiet freighter named Quiet Hope jumped close to a Voran repair hub. The hub held hundreds of damaged ships waiting to heal. Quiet Hope released its load. A single-shaped charge burst forward. 100 gigatons focused into a narrow beam. The beam punched through the hub core. Crystal lattice cracked like ice under hammer. The hub went dark. All ships inside lost their healing link. They became just broken stone. More. The carriers followed. They appeared in different places. They targeted command ships. They targeted fuel nodes. They targeted the big crystal cathedrals that held the fleet together. Each detonation lit space like a new sun. The blasts, shaped to cut deep and leave no chance for repair, Voran officers screamed as their ships lost power. Engines failed. Weapons died. Lights went out one deck at a time. The admiral tried to rally his forces. He ordered every ship to focus fire on the human carriers. He thought, if they killed the launch platforms, the big blasts would stop. His weapons lit up again. Prism lances stabbed toward the Quiet Hope and her sisters. Human ships moved too fast. Many lances missed. Some hit, but did little. The carriers had thick layered hulls made to take punishment. They vented heat into small rifts that opened just long enough to bleed energy away. Humans answered with their own surprise. Boarding teams launched from hidden bays. Small craft no bigger than shuttles carried armored. And soldiers. These soldiers wore suits that looked simple, yet moved with perfect grace. They jumped onto Voran hulls. They cut through crystal with plasma torches. They entered broken sections. They moved fast and quiet. Inside, they did not fight long battles. They found control nodes. They planted small charges. They left before alarms could fully sound. One team reached the Admiral's flagship bridge. They moved through corridors filled with panicked crew. They avoided main fights. They used side passages. Injected a clear fluid into the wound. The fluid spread fast. The Admiral froze. His regeneration stopped. His mind locked in a loop of pain and confusion. The flagship lost its leader. Without command, the Voran fleet broke more. Many ships went dark on purpose, hoping humans would ignore them. Others tried to surrender by lowering weapons and opening bays. Humans did not accept surrender yet. They kept moving. They kept striking. They made sure no ship could fight again. The Clythe swarm saw the chance. They pushed hard. Their bioships flooded the system. Living walls of flesh and bone rolled forward. They sent biting swarms toward human positions. Acid clouds drifted toward Task Force Zero. The swarm thought humans would break under real pressure. Humans met them without fear. Drones swarmed out first, and carried special loads, tiny needles filled with neurotoxins designed for hive minds. The needles pierced living hulls. The toxins spread through nerve clusters. The swarm felt sudden pain. Whole sections of their mind screamed, then went quiet. Tendrils stopped moving. Bioships drifted like empty shells. Human boarding teams moved against the Clythe, too. They landed on big living carriers. They cut into flesh. They found control nodes. They injected more toxins. The hive mind felt parts die forever. I tried to pull back, but humans pressed harder. Railguns tore through thick hide missile clouds, met acid spit, and won. The Clythe learned fear for the first time. Their attacks slowed. Their swarms pulled away. Sections of the hive mind shut down to save the rest. The swarm that once covered worlds now shrank back. They watched from far and wondered what kind of beings could hurt them so clean and fast. Back at the Voran front, the Admiral's flagship floated dead. Other big ships tried to take command. They failed. Human hunters found them one by one. A pleasure yacht named Starwind jumped inside a Voran dreadnought's regeneration envelope. It carried a massive charge. It detonated at point blank. The dreadnought shattered in bright pieces. The shockwave damaged nearby ships. Their crystal hulls cracked wider. Hour 5 drew near. The battlefield looked different now. Broken crystal floated everywhere. Living biohulls drifted silent. Human ships moved through the wreckage. They checked for threats. An ecliptic war had lasted more than 100 years. Billions died in slow-grinding battles. Now, in less than 5 hours, one side crumbled. The other side froze in terror. The humans, who everyone called merchants, now looked like something else. They looked like the end of war itself. Commanders on Earth received reports they read, and numbers of destroyed ships. They saw maps of cleared zones. They nodded once. They sent new orders. Hold position. Prepare for possible counter-moves, but stay ready to leave. The fight ends soon. Task Force Zero formed up again. They gathered in loose groups. They turned away from the wreckage. They pointed drives toward jump points. They did not chase the fleeing ships. They did not hunt the broken ones. They simply waited for the last moments. Voran officers on surviving ships sent messages. They begged. For talks. They offered peace. They promised never to return to Sol space. Humans listened, but did not answer yet. The Clythe hive mind pulled back further. It sent one single pulse across open channels. The pulse carried 3 simple words. We yield. Other Voran ships followed soon. The words repeated across the battlefield. We yield. We yield. We yield. No human ship fired again. The silence returned, but this time it carried finality. The war that ate stars and worlds ended not with a grand battle, but I came they used it all in 5 short hours. Came they used it all in 5 short hours. The galaxy would never forget that day. When humanity finally entered the battlefield, the old rules died, and a new respect was born from fear and wonder. At exactly 5 hours after the first human ship jumped into the war zone, every hostile vessel still able to send signals broadcast the same 3 words, we, to yield. The message came first from the shattered remnants of the Clythe swarm. Their hive mind sent one clear pulse across all open channels. The pulse carried no anger, no pride, just simple surrender. Then one Voran ship after another joined in. Crystal hulls that still glowed went dark on purpose, weapons powered down, engines cooled to standby, lights dimmed to emergency levels. The once mighty fleets of 2 great empires floated silent and broken. Human ships did not fire another shot. They did not. I cheer. They did not rush forward to claim prizes. Task Force Zero held position. Small scout groups moved through the wreckage. They checked for hidden threats. They scanned for active weapons. They found none. The battlefield grew quiet. The silence felt complete. Commanders on Earth watched the incoming messages. They read the words. They saw the numbers of ships that had stopped fighting. They checked maps showing cleared zones. They looked at each other once. Then the order went out. All forces stand. I marched through human cities. No crowds marched through human cities. No crowds gathered to celebrate. The war ended as quietly as it began. Ships turned away from the debris fields. Engines lit for jump points. Formations broke apart. Groups headed back to their home systems. Freighters resumed cargo runs. Liners carried passengers again. Mining tugs went back to work. Yachts returned to calm space lanes. Research. Odd vessels opened their labs once more. The galaxy watched this retreat with wide eyes. Aliens expected humans to demand terms. They expected fleets to stay and occupy worlds. They expected speeches about new power and changed rules. Nothing came. Humans simply left. They cleaned up their own mess. Automated salvagers jumped in behind the fleet. They gathered broken crystal. They collected drifting biohulls. They cleared navigation lanes. They left the space as clean as they found it. In the weeks that followed, the Voran Dominion and Clythe Swarm met in secret. They talked through damaged channels. They agreed on one thing fast. They could not fight humanity again. Their fleets lay in ruins. Their leaders felt deep fear. They sent envoys to Sol. The envoys carried no weapons. They carried only requests for peace. The meeting happened on a neutral station far from any human world. Delegates from both empires arrived first. They waited in silence. Then human representatives came. No soldiers walked with them. No guards stood behind them. Just calm diplomats in simple suits. They listened to the offers. They asked few questions. They made one condition. The war ends here. No revenge, no hidden plans, no return to old borders. Everyone goes home and stays home. Both sides agreed. Fast, papers were signed. The Treaty of Sol came into effect 6 weeks after the battle. It carried no harsh punishments. It took no territory. It asked for nothing except peace. The Voran promised to rebuild far from human space. The Clythe agreed to shrink their nests and never expand again. The galaxy breathed again. News spread slow at first, then fast. Screens on every world showed the same images: empty battlefields, human ships jumping away, broken empires signing peace. No one could believe 5 hours had done what centuries could not. Aliens who once mocked humans now spoke in quiet voices. They called the event the 5-Hour War. Some called it the day the merchants woke. Others simply said the day everything changed. As council halls across the stars, old nicknames faded. The observers no longer fit. The merchants sounded wrong. A new name took their place. People spoke it with care. They called humanity the battlefield. Because when they finally stepped onto it, the fight ended quick and clean. Human worlds returned to normal life. Factories built civilian goods again. Schools taught old lessons. Families gathered for meals. Children played in parks. No one bragged about the war. No one wrote songs of glory. Veterans came. A home quiet. They went back to jobs. They raised families. They lived simple days. When asked about the battle, they shrugged and said it was necessary. Then they changed the subject. Some aliens visited human space for the first time. They expected to see huge forts and endless warships. Instead, they found trade hubs, busy ports, research stations, and quiet cities. Humans welcomed them with smiles. They offered tea. They showed art. They talked about weather and food. Visitors left confused. They had seen no armies, yet they felt the weight of hidden strength. Years passed. The galaxy healed slowly. New trade routes opened. Old wounds closed. The ecliptic war became a story told to warn young ones. Never force the quiet ones, never wake the sleepers, never laugh at those who watch too long. In time, humans returned to their old role. They carried goods. They shared knowledge. They stayed neutral in small disputes, yet everyone knew the truth. Behind the smiles and deals sat something vast and patient. Something. And that waited centuries without complaint. Something that moved only when pushed too far. And when it moved, worlds shook. On quiet nights, captains of human ships looked at stars and remembered. They thought about friends lost in those 5 hours. They thought about choices made long ago. They felt no regret. They felt only duty fulfilled. Then they turned back to controls. They set courses for home. They flew on through the dark. The galaxy grew used to the new balance. No empire tried to rule all, no swarm. But tried to consume worlds. Everyone remembered the lesson. 5 hours showed what centuries hid. Humanity did not seek war. Yet when war came to their door, they answered fast and final. No one ever laughed at them again. No one ever forgot the day humanity entered the battlefield, and no one ever wanted them to do it twice. The stars stayed peaceful for a long time. Peace built on respect, respect built on 5 short hours. And that was enough.